in the Beat Sound Podcast. Come on, Beat Sound Podcast.
Welcome to the B Sound Podcast. Today we are speaking with Joe Sherman. Joe created the NES game Turtle Rescue, which Howard Phillips of Nintendo awarded Best Game in the NES Maker 2019 Bite-Off competition. Joe is currently producing Turtle Paint, an interactive coloring book for the NES, which is currently on Kickstarter. Thank you for being here, Joe. Is that an accurate description of who you are?
Yeah, I guess I would just describe myself as a lifelong Nintendo player. I grew up with the NES. I was first in line to get that Game Boy when it came out, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, all the way up through modern times, but my heart lies in the old Nintendo system. There's just a charm about those old 8-bit graphics that I gravitated back to a few years ago when I tried to rebuild my collection. My sister donated my old NES library and system to a hospital, which I endorsed. I was not upset about it. But about 5 years ago, I wanted to have that system back and all the games that I had. And because of that, I stumbled upon the homebrew community where people are still making games for the Nintendo, which surprised me. The Nintendo was supposed to be dead and buried in the 90s when the Super Nintendo came out, but other people still love that system, and I gravitated towards that area, the homebrew games, and that's where I fell and where I am now.
Yeah. That homebrew game scene is just like, when I first stumbled on it, I was amazed. I was amazed that not only were there games, but there were functional games that worked well and played pretty decently. You know what I mean?
Well, you can argue that the generation of games now are on par or superior to what was released in the 80s and 90s. People are coming up with all sorts of tricks and exploits that can run on the original hardware, so it's still legit. But yes, there's some amazing minds out there.
Oh, yeah, I agree. And you got into this through NES Maker?
Yes. So when I discovered homebrew games, it's like, wow, you have to be a mastermind at this. And I knew enough about programming to know that I couldn't do this. I saw the technology that they're using, and it's old 1980s assembly coding that it has its own specific NES rules that are very complex, even to someone like me who knows enough about programming to be dangerous, but probably not enough to call himself an actual professional programmer. And I have nothing but the most respect for those that can figure out all those nuances. But I knew that the learning curve was probably too steep for me. That's when I stumbled upon NES Maker or NES Maker, however you want to call it. And their pitch was that we give you a tool that does all the hard work for you, that gives you kind of like a plain vanilla game logic, kind of all coded for you, and you go in and you design the graphics, and then you can tweak things here, tweak things there, and make the game specific to whatever you want it to be. So you don't have to know all of the ins and outs of memory allocation and talking to the NES about how to load graphics and things like that. All you have to do is figure out, what do your characters look like? What will your backgrounds look like? What will they do when they interact with one another? And then you can take it from there, which has been a huge help. And that was a lot of fun to kind of like, okay, now I can actually make my own game.
Sure. Is sound design a part of that too? Are you like putting in what types of sounds things will make? And
yes, so graphics, sound, all sort of interactions with the sprites and objects. I am not a sound person. I have no musical talent whatsoever. I tried looking at FamiTracker, which is what it uses, and my head explodes.
Yeah.
I could not translate notes onto paper. I just don't have that talent. So I did find someone on the Nestmaker community, David Coe, who has been very helpful. He's been tolerant of my instructions. We hooked up and I said, here's what I want. And I didn't know how to actually put it in an email, so I actually recorded myself humming some notes and sent it off to him. And then he took that and he made the Turtle Rescue theme perfectly. And he's been working with me on my other games since then.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. You can find someone to collaborate with and kind of get the best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my first experience with your games was Turtle Rescue Unwrapped, I think it was called. Is that right? The Christmas one. And I was blown away by that. That game was so fun. What were your influences with that game?
Well, to backtrack just a little bit, so Turtle Rescue was how I started off. That was my first project with the Nestmaker. And it was the game that I submitted to their competition, the Bite Off for 2019. And in your introduction, you referred to Howard Phillips, who was the judge for the category of best game for that competition. And I was shocked when he named that Turtle Rescue was the best game in a tie. I have to note that it was tied with Time Survivor, but still, it was a tie for the best game out of the 60 games that were in that competition. And that just blew me away that the Howard Phillips of Nintendo Power liked my game.
Yeah.
So I knew I had something special. So I wanted to continue Turtle Rescue, and it was never a finished game. It was always a kind of a proof of concept, a demo, if you will. And I put the unhatched subtitle underneath it to kind of imply that it's not quite ready. It's not the finished game. So I didn't know where to take it next, but Christmas was coming up, so I thought, you know what, let's have fun with this, and let's rebrand the game, reskin it. Or as I really liked it, how you guys or Frank called it, it was a hack of my own game. And that's actually what I call it to other people. Is that's what I did. I hacked my own game to just give it a different look and feel, but it's still pretty much the same game. It just now takes place at Christmas time. So, and all the little characters say Christmassy things, and there's candy canes everywhere. Otherwise, it plays exactly the same. And that was just a lot of fun to get that game out there in just a different package. And it still gets downloaded today.
Cool. Yeah. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like there's some more Easter eggs in there too, as well, like different places you can get that weren't in the original Turtle Rescue. Is that right?
Yeah. My goal with Turtle Rescue and the things I always go back to are what I like to experience as a player. And I like to explore. I like to find things. I like I like surprises. And that's what I wanted to put in my games. And yes, Turtle Rescue has different little secret locations, and there are ways to cheat the game and beat it in a few minutes, which I don't know if anybody's really discovered that pattern yet, but there's always little things. And to the point where if you do finish the game, the end screen kind of calls out, oh, by the way, did you find this? Did you find that? So that, it encourages the player to go back. And what's really cool is I've seen and I've watched playthroughs of people putting on YouTube and playing the game. And this is a game where it's not a very long game, but I have seen people play it for an hour. They'll beat it 45 minutes in, and then they see that screen. Hey, did you find the rubber ducky? No, I didn't. Now I got to go find the rubber ducky. So they go back in and they play it until they find it. And to me, that's just like the fun way to extend the life of a game. It's just put more little things to find there. And plus, the player's not bound to do anything in one particular path. They are free to go any which way, which I've always enjoyed as a player.
Right. It's like an open world, like almost like a Zelda type game or
exactly.
Something. Was that an influence of yours, or?
Yes, Zelda is definitely an influence. I would actually say one of the bigger influences on this game, I've tried to honor the humor of Super Mario RPG. I love that game. That's one of my favorite games of all time. And I just love the storyline and the way the characters interact and just how the tiniest, non-playable character just tells their little story. And then you just oh, it's that guy. They're not just filler people like, hey, you want to buy us an item? It's like everybody has a story, and that's what I tried to do with my game with Turtle Rescue, and that was every turtle is unique. They all have their own little personalities and quirks, and that's something that I hope to expand upon in future games.
Yeah, yeah. I was just about to ask you about the follow-up game was what, Turtle Party?
Yes. So after the holiday game, I kind of felt like, okay, now I'm kind of in a rut. I'm just kind of rehashing my first game. And I really wanted to take Turtle Rescue to the next level, to be the big grand scale adventure game that I really kind of envisioned, but I didn't have the skill set to do that yet. And I knew that I couldn't make the game that I envisioned in my mind. So I challenged myself to make a whole different type of game, to force myself to just kind of learn how to do different things with the NestMaker tool. And the best way to do that is a different genre of game. So just kind of break out of my comfort zone. So that became Turtle Party, and that was a two-player multiplayer game or multi-mini game type game, like Mario Party or WarioWare. So it's just very rapid, very quick succession. Boom, now you're playing this type of game. Boom, boom, now you're playing that type of game. A very fast, very competitive type game, which is completely different from an adventure type game. So I spent about 8 months on that and I never even asked questions. I challenged myself to, if there's a problem, and I had a long bug list, I just forced myself to do deep dives into the code to figure out, well, what's happening, what's going wrong, and try different ways to fixing it. And that was my way of learning and getting a stronger grasp on how to code things.
Interesting. So when you say diving into the code, that's going beyond what the NestMaker does. Is that right?
Yes. Well, NestMaker is, at its heart, it's just a collection of code that they just bundled together and delivered to the user. You are more than welcome to go in and dive into any code anywhere and change it. Now, if you do it wrong, you're going to blow up the game and it will never compile. So you kind of have to tread carefully and be safe and then do a lot of backups, because it's very easy to just break something and make it devastating, and then you have to roll it back to the last time that it worked. And I've done that many, many, many times, and that's how you learn. Well, don't do that ever again. So yes, you do have the complete freedom to change anything and everything in all of the code.
Cool. So beyond that, then you came up with the Turtle Paint game, which is currently on Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, so Turtle Paint is the third game, third project, I should say, that I started. And interestingly enough, it's the first one to actually truly cross the finish line. And the way it started off was, I was working on Turtle Party. I was very happy with how that was going. I did a demo release of that in August of last year, almost exactly a year ago. And the next Bite Off competition was right around the corner. So the 2020 Bite Off was coming. And it's like, well, do I make a game for that? I've been really stressed this year. 2020 was not a fun year for any of us. I spent the first half of the year working on Turtle Party, which was not going to be eligible for it because it existed before the competition. So what do? I actually considered not even doing anything for the competition. And one morning, like 4 a.m., I woke up and I just had this vision: Mario Paint. And then it's like, well, how do I do Mario Paint? Well, I can't do the drawing exactly like how Mario Paint works, but there is that part of Mario Paint where they give you like the Mario riding Yoshi and you can just color it in. Well, what if I focused on that? Just make, kind of go the adult coloring book route. Just give people just like a fun, relaxing experience. So that's what I started developing. And believe it or not, to get the core foundation of that type of game up and running just took me a weekend, which was actually surprising to me, because if you think about it, it's not an adventure game, it's not a platformer game, it's not unlike any normal genre, and definitely not a type of game that comes delivered with the NestMaker tool. So I kind of really had to start from scratch with that one, picking and choosing code to make it function like a point and click game, and then to have the coloring aspect of it. So that was kind of its own challenge, but I was surprised at how well it went. And that just, it ended up being the rest of the time that I spent in order to get ready for the competition was just coming up with the artwork.
I see. Yeah, because I've played it. You did that really fun thing for the Game Beaters where you put a little screen in a ROM for us, and I've played around with Turtle Paint quite a bit, and I keep thinking like how interesting and maybe difficult it was to actually come up with the tools, because you're basically making tools within the tool set that they give you, and then you're limited by the NES color palette and all that. And it's very, there's a lot of ingenuity, I think, that went into that.
Yeah, because you're right. It's kind of like you're making a tool within a tool, because NESmaker has its own user interface, so how to build things. And then I'm kind of doing the same thing within the program that I'm publishing and putting out on the NES, because you want to make that same intuitive type. Well, here's a bunch of icons that have different functionality that do different things, and how is the player going to know what they do, and will it always work, and can I anticipate any wrong ways that people will use the system? So it definitely was a challenge to approach it from that way. But to me, the hardest part was making sure that the artwork obeyed all of the rules, because yes, it's very limiting as the number of colors that you can work with on the NES. And so really I can only allow the players to change 6 colors, which doesn't give you too much to work with, but at the same time, it's actually more than one of the official coloring book games that came out in the 90s. They only gave you 3 colors, and I found a way to do 6, just because I approached it in a different method. But it was still, I wanted to make sure that the artwork understood that, hey, this color may be white, and that the user may change it to black. They may change it to red. They may change it to green, and make sure that there's no stray pixels that don't obey it, and make sure that no matter what, everything functions the way the user would want it to. And that's the hardest part, is to anticipate all the crazy wrong ways a user might use the tool, because the programmer is going to do it their way, but it's hard for the programmer to understand, well, the player just wants to do it this way.
Sure.
So that was one thing that I made sure to do was, before we went to Kickstarter, was give the game to like 6 or 7 different people and have them play it, and make sure that they, and it works for them, not just through bugs, but just through their normal way of playing.
Right.
That was actually one of the first things I learned, and it came right out of the Bite-Off competition. I coded the A and B buttons a certain way. I coded them to behave like a mouse, left click and right click.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what I realized was everybody kept clicking the A button first, which I had as, well, that's the right click. It does the secondary things. Everything happens with the B button, but everybody kept clicking the A button, and I looked, and nothing would happen. It's like, that's a mistake on my part. And instinctively, even me, I learned, it's like I should never made B the primary button. A should be the primary button, because people want to click that A button first.
Right.
So right there, lesson learned immediately upon just releasing the demo game to the public. So
yeah,
we all learn things from this experience.
Oh, sure. I think the best way to learn is from mistakes and failure. That's the best way to learn.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's like with that button, I mean, I think that's just Nintendo culture, right? Like the culture Nintendo created, like that's the button that does everything. So,
and it is, and that's what I blatantly ignored when I programmed it. And it's like, silly me, but that's why you put the demo game out there first, and not not jump right to commercial release.
Right. And then also another feature of the game is the drawing. Well, kind of a drawing thing, isn't it? That's an interesting part of the game that it took me quite a while to kind of figure out how to do. I think there's a lot of hours to be had in that.
Yes, and so the story with that was it started off as a coloring book. I knew I couldn't do a true drawing, like take the mouse, click and drag and draw a line and such, because even if I could, and there's a fellow out there, I'm going to give him a shout out, Cutter Cross. He's attempting to do his version of that. And he's a genius when it comes to this type of coding, and he's experimenting and going beyond what I did with my game. Uh, but so he's learning how to do that. But the way I thought of it was I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I couldn't. But what can I do to make it the game longer lasting and give the player some more creative freedom to change the artwork that I'm providing to them? And my solution to that was essentially what I called tile stamping or tile painting. So I gave you a whole bunch of predefined tiles that you can place in certain areas. On some pieces of artwork, it's limiting. Like if there's a scene and there's a sky, maybe you can change the elements in the sky, but you can't change the foreground. Or other pages, it's blank, and you can put any tile anywhere. So that's what I thought would give the users the most long-lasting experience in creating their own scenes, using different types of objects, and then from there applying the colors and doing the animations and things like that. And that's the type of thing what I really wanted to focus on, was make the game as long-lasting as possible and make it as appealing as possible.
Sure. One of the things that I noticed on the Kickstarter was I really like the splatter, the paint splatter cartridge.
Yes,
That's a cool idea.
I forget where that came from. Well, I should say, and here it is, and I was very happy with how it turned out.
Oh yeah.
So I guess the origin of it was, and I'll show this as well. When I released Turtle Rescue on a limited edition cartridge, I wanted to thank certain people in the community. And I thought, well, what can I do for a special cartridge? I know they make NES cartridges in any different colors. I didn't want to just put out a boring green. I wanted to try to do something special. And it may not come up on this very well, but what I did was I took a clear NES cartridge shell, and I opened it up, and I spray painted on the inside so that the paint's not on the outside of the shell. The paint is on the inside of the shell.
Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of a very sandy, beachy type texture.
Okay.
I think it's called limestone. There's spray paint that you can kind of make look like a beach.
Yeah.
And I was really happy with how it turned out. So I thought, when I do turtle paint, I should do something similar. Well, this type of paint I can't find anymore. I don't know if they don't make it or what, but it's gone. So what's the next thing I could do? Well, this is a game about coloring and painting pages. So why not take that, use that? So we kind of imagined, well, what happens if you fling paint against a canvas? Well, it just makes a splatter pattern. So we did that. So we just took some paint, we flung it, and my wife and I went outside. We flung paint every which way at a bunch of NES cartridges. 4 different colors, and then we sealed it with white behind it, and then put a sticker on it and closed it up, and that's your cartridge.
Very cool. And so each one's unique then.
Everyone is totally unique, so nobody will have the same one.
Wow, that's very cool. Very, very cool. And then did you, I saw there's like instruction booklet. Did you do that up yourself too?
Yeah, admittedly, the instruction booklet's very simplistic, because again, the game should be very simplistic. It's designed to not be a challenge. It's designed to be as little stressful as possible, and hopefully, knock on wood, intuitive, so that you can understand, okay, these are the buttons that I use to change the colors, and these are the colors or buttons that I use to place stickers on the screen. So there's not too many things you can do, and there's not many ways you can go wrong. So I really felt like, well, I'll make a simple instruction book that says, here's each button, here's what you can do with it. There's a little section at the end of the instructions that I call hints that kind of imply, well, have you thought about trying to do this? Or maybe you might encounter that type of thing. So but it really is a very simple instruction manual.
Right on. Yeah. And I mean, I suppose keeping with your turtle theme, I mean, that's kind of the way turtles seem to be, is very, calm and collected and that kind of thing. Speaking of which, why turtles? What?
Good question, and I'm actually armed with the answer to that. These little guys here. My wife and I started collecting plush turtles. We found them really cute, and we're big turtle fans. Even real sea turtles. We donate to some aquariums to help real life sea turtles. But we collect turtles, and anytime we go to vacation spots or things like that, if we see a turtle plushie that we like, we'll pick them up. I think we have probably about 20 or so at this point. And this is long ago, I would actually give them names, and I would jokingly give them personalities. And when I started getting into game development, it's like, what would I make a game of? And it dawned on me, we have these little turtle guys here that I jokingly gave names and personalities to, little quirks. Like, put them in the game. Why think of new characters when I've already done that just out of silliness? And here they are. We have Toby the turtle that I found at a garage sale that was just too cute to leave behind. And he's a quiet little turtle that likes to play, old classic Nintendo games. So he became the hero of Turtle Rescue. We have Walton, who we found at Fort Walton Airport after our honeymoon. So we went to Destin, Florida. We were coming back. We found this little guy. He said, we got to get him. He's our honeymoon turtle. So we named him Walton after the airport that we found him. And he became the celebrity of the turtles. He's the one that he craves attention and will do anything to get in front of that camera. So all these other turtles have silly little personalities that started off as a joke, but that's who they are, and that's who you encounter in the video games.
That's really cool. That's really cool. What a great way to extend your own personality into the game even more too.
And it helps bring my wife into it, who's not really a gamer, but she gets invested in the games that I create because her turtles are in it too.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like your art style might be influenced by those plush turtles.
Oh, they definitely are. If you were to put them next to each other, I try not to approach copyright infringement, but
Sure.
Yeah, they definitely have a resemblance.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I said inspired. It's not like they're exact replicas or anything, but.
With 8-bit graphics, it would be impossible to do, but.
Well, yeah, that too. I was curious, are there any homebrew games that influenced you? Like what's your favorite homebrew game?
I will give you 3 answers.
Okay.
The first one that I discovered, which I still think is an excellent one, is Eskimo Bob. That's the one that I get. I still think back on, and that's the one I discovered that said, "Wow, people are still making games." So that's the one I jumped right in on, and I really enjoyed. The other 2, I will give you my favorite games of each of the Bite-Offs. The first one from the Bite-Off 19, it didn't win any awards, but it was my favorite game, and that was Doodle World.
Mm-hmm.
So I really liked that game. I liked the simplicity. I liked that it was his daughter's drawings that everything was based off of. So I was happy to be a supporter of that game. And for the 2020 Bite-Off, I really liked, might be mispronouncing it, the Magnilo case. It's a detective that's solving a murder mystery, adventure type game.
Yeah.
Like Turtle Rescue, it was an adventure game, but had a lot of humor sprinkled into it. I like that. I like the exploring and humor. Again, like Mario RPG, one of my favorite games. Just don't take yourself too seriously. I tend to not like the stressful games. I don't like games with time limits. You have to accomplish this in X amount of seconds because I want to take my time. I want to enjoy the experience. And those are the games that I gravitate to.
Sure. Yeah, I remember that game for the same reason you do, for the humor and the exploration. Because I don't know if you remember, but we played through all of the games from 2020.
Yes.
So yeah, including your game. So,
and that was really cool of you guys to do, to help give a more awareness for all of our games, because everybody who's making these games. We're a bunch of nobodies. None of us are affiliated with any publishers, or at least, we weren't. A lot of us are growing up and graduating, and some of these Nestmaker games are now even getting published on the Evercade home system, which is wonderful. People who's had ideas, a year ago are now seeing them in physical format, which is wonderful. I can only aspire to join that in the future.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic. And I mean, that's one of the reasons, I do this podcast, is to inspire people to go out and do the thing that they want to do like this. I think it's great to see people putting out their own games, following their passion, basically. Would you say this is a passion of yours?
I would say, and there are a lot of people in the community that say I've always dreamed of making a game, and I would be lying if I said that was my dream as a kid. I definitely, you always think, oh, it would be cool if I could do this, or if I made a Mario game or that type of thing. But I never really had my own original idea. Once I had my hands on the Nestmaker tool, that's when the world kind of opened up to me. It's like, wow, I could do this. Wow, what could I do? And I didn't want to just put something out there for the sake of putting it out there. I always wanted to do something that would be a valuable member of the library, So then I felt that the best thing I have to contribute is probably the charm. I felt like I had a lot of these little characters. I felt I could give them something in their personalities that people would latch onto. And when I was deemed as awarded the best game of the Bite Off, it's like I was told, yes, there was a quality of your game. You may not have had the best graphics, you may not have had the best story, best music, but you had the whole package.
Mm-hmm.
You had something in the entirety of everything that I could relate to, and I could be drawn into the world of Turtle Rescue, and that's where I felt like I could do this. And how do I do this? What's the best way to keep going and make sure that the honor that I was given by Howard Phillips, that I prove him right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to that. I think that my experience with Turtle Rescue was, like I said, it was like, wow, this is a quality. It's almost like Zelda in the way where although even further, because I'm enjoying the characters. Zelda kind of didn't really have much in the way of character development,
No.
but yeah, this, and the graphics were fine. It's like I could tell what everything was supposed to be. Plus I'm a turtle fan. I do like the Ninja Turtles too, but like before that, I was a Turtle fan, and that's kind of what got me into Ninja Turtles to begin with. I was one of the early adopters of that franchise. But I'm just curious, are you a Ninja Turtle person, or is that like a?
Even though I would probably be just a little bit out of the age bracket, yes, I was a Turtle fan.
Yeah,
late 80s, early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So I was one of those kids that I had a hard time growing out of being a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I was out of the demographic, yes, I watched Ninja Turtles. Yes, I watched Power Rangers. I worked, my first job was at KB Toys. I just never left that realm.
Mm-hmm.
And then even after that, I went to Toys R Us. I'm a Toys R Us kid. I don't want to grow up, so that's why today, I'm still making NES games. I don't want to grow up.
Sure. Well, there's a part of, I think there's a part of all of us that needs that inner child, to stay with us, to remind us that it's okay to play. It's okay to do, certain things that maybe be seen by the outside world as, useless. But
we're here for a limited amount of time on this earth. You might as well have fun with it,
Yeah.
We all have our jobs that we need to do, but when it's all said and done, when we clock out at 5:00, have fun.
Sure.
Just enjoy yourself, whether it's playing new games, old games, playing with toys, playing with your kids, what have you, playing with plush turtles,
Mm-hmm.
Whatever makes you happy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm curious, what was your biggest hurdle during this, and how did you overcome it?
Really, it's the coding.
Hmm.
I like I said, I have a programming background. I'm very good at logic. I've always struggled with syntax, the coding, the language itself. Like I know what it is I want to do. I just don't know the exact command to put in to make it do what I want to do. So it's learning all of that. And the internet has been good. I still have files that I've pulled off the internet that have all the commands. Digging through the code base that was packaged with the game, one common approach I will take is, well, I know this command over there does something similar to what I want to do. Let's look at that code to see how it does it, and can I copy and paste and put it over here, and what can I change to make it do what I want to do? So I feel like, Dr. Frankenstein, hobbling pieces together to make Frankenstein's monster. And that's probably not the best way to make an efficient game, but it is how you learn. It's kind of dissecting something else to see how is this part, how is this arm moving, so I can take that and make it so that this other arm can function the same way and do what it's supposed to do. And then it's the learning experience of how to tell the NES to do what you want it to do, and grow with that, and so that when you move on to different types of games, like I have, all three of my projects are different genres, to take that and keep growing, so that hopefully that you don't make a disaster of a product.
Yeah, I hear you. And you know what? It's interesting because, like, let me contrast that to my world, which is, the music world. And I like to learn a bunch of different genres as well for the same reasons. I'll pull, a pop song and pull it apart and see what makes it tick, and then pull a rock song and see what makes that tick, and then put it together and do my own thing with it. And it sounds like that's what you're doing.
It sounds exactly the same approach. It's dissecting, absorbing, and then repurposing, and just it all becomes part of this collectiveness in your mind. So like, well, that's how they can approach it. How do I approach it now that I know how they did it?
Right. And then once you have that information, you can put your own unique stamp on it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So that being said, what do you wish you had known when you first started out?
How long this would take. Because you can't put a game together, in a matter of days. Some people will think that they can, and technically with Nestmaker, because they're giving you a pre-bundled, code base, you could just slap your own character in there, but you're just going to release something that's just very cookie cutter. In order to make your game really unique and stand out, you're going to have to really sit down and dedicate a lot of time to it. I've been doing this now, I'm approaching year 3, and I've only released one truly final game, and that's what's on Kickstarter right now. I still have to go back and finish Turtle Party. I still have to go back and make the ultimate Turtle Rescue. So it's a very long experience, so you really have to be ready for the long ride. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's something I call playing the infinite game, right? Like you're always working on something and always doing something, and just knowing that you're in for the grind, it can help you a lot, I think. So that's good advice. I think.
Trying to keep yourself motivated. That's also, that's always a challenge. You work on the same project. It's Turtle Paint is, I almost put a full year into it. I think it's about 10 months, from beginning to end. It's keeping that momentum going, and it's so easy to lose that. So and every now and then you want to hop over to something else. Like I want to do something new. I want to do something fresh, but it's like, but you still have this other project that needs attention that you want to cross the finish line. And that's something that hopefully, I saw a question come up the other day. It's like, how do I create how do I motivate myself with this game? That this project I'm working on, and the answer that I had in my mind was picture that final product, picture that game on a cartridge, picture it on Kickstarter, picture people wanting to buy it, and that's how you'll get there. That want of creating something that people will want.
Yeah, that's a good motivation goal. I noticed that the Kickstarter is doing pretty not like extremely well, but it's doing well enough. I think you hit your goal. Is that right?
We have hit our goal, so it's going to happen. We're only about a week and some change into it at this point, so we still have about 3 weeks to go. I would say it's doing as well as I hoped it would. It's probably not going to do as well as another Nintendo game by maybe a higher profile developer, and that's fine. Because I'm a newbie. This is my first project that I'm putting out there, so I don't, I'm trying to prove myself with this game.
Sure.
And I don't have a publisher supporting it, and that's totally fine. And I'm happy with if I result in numbers that are on the lower side of what other NES games generate on Kickstarter. That's totally fine with me. Because another aspect of it that I kind of knew going into it was this isn't the adventure game. This isn't the platformer game that a lot of people gravitate towards. This is a self-professed coloring book. That's really all it is. Why would I want a coloring book? And I kind of addressed that in the Kickstarter. It's like, this is the perfect game after a long day of work. Just sit back, relax. You don't have to commit to it. You don't have to stress about it. You can pick it up and be done with it in 5 minutes. But hopefully, and my goal was, you may pick it up with the intent of playing it for 5 minutes, and before you realized it, you spent half an hour on it or even longer. That's what my hope was with this game, to really draw you in and just catch you not realizing that you're having fun.
Yeah. And I know I've only seen maybe some of the earlier builds, but the artwork itself is just, it's really fantastic to page through.
Thank you. I have a little bit of an art background. I'm definitely not an artist. Some of the artwork that's in it came from different sources and from other artists. The most prolific page that I've had since day one was done by the artist that I commissioned to do the Turtle Rescue cover artwork, Demetrio Braga. I hope I pronounced that right, Demetrio. He did a wonderful job with the girl holding the turtle at the beach, and I thought that was such a cute image. I wanted to have that as the first page of Turtle Paint. And I've had other artwork come from different sources, and the one thing I really wanted to do with this game was not make all the pages very same-ish. It's like, oh, great, it's another page of coloring a turtle. Oh, it's another turtle. It's another turtle. I'll get enough already. I really strived to give a wide variety of artwork. So like, well, maybe if you didn't like this page, maybe you'll like that page. Or maybe this page has a different aspect to it. Maybe it's more open-ended as opposed to coloring things that should be colored a certain way. Now it's more just shapes, like have fun with it. Or maybe this page is meant to be animated and see how you can bring it to life with the flow of colors. So I really tried to strive to just, if you didn't like this one, you'll like that one, and keep someone engaged.
Sure. And that'll open up even more imagination within people, I would hope.
Yes, absolutely.
Let me see. I had a couple questions here for you. What's your technique for coming up with ideas?
Usually what happens is they just kind of hit me when I least expect it. If you try to stress yourself out to come up with something, it's just not going to happen. But, when you're laying down, getting ready to retire for the night, and then something hits you, or you're getting ready for the day, you're cleaning up, and it's like, duh, why don't I do this? Try to commit it to memory for as long as you can so you can write it down on a scrap of paper. So the next time you sit down at your computer, all right, now how do I take this idea that I scribbled down and bring it to life? But yes, usually I will just have a notebook. It's a collection of ideas for all three of my games. Just as they hit me, just scribble them down, and I'll come back and revisit them at the right time. There's so many ideas that I have for Rescue and Party that are just waiting to be worked on, but because Turtle Paint has been my priority, that's been my focus. But a lot of the ideas just kind of hit me when I don't expect them to.
Right. And it sounds to me like that's something I do as well. Is I'll journal ideas. Like I'll have some ideas written down on something I want to do, and then I will ask myself the right questions to get those ideas working. Is that similar to what you do?
Very similar, because sometimes the idea won't work. Sometimes you'll try to bring it to life. It's like, that's not kind of how I want it. But you don't erase it. You save it for another time. There definitely have been ideas where I had an idea a year ago. Well, let's revisit it now that I'm a little bit smarter. Maybe take a slightly different approach, and that idea came back to life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like you're going to revisit the Turtle Rescue theme kind of game. Is that the next project, you think? Or
Turtle Party is hopefully the next project. So with Turtle Paint finally at 100%, I'm going to go back to Turtle Party, which I would estimate is probably around 75%. I've gone back over the last year, here or there, little spots of development for it as ideas came up. Maybe I just wanted to try to approach them and get them implemented right away. So the Turtle Party game has grown from the August of 2020 demo that's out there publicly. It's probably doubled in size since then. So I want to get Turtle Party to cross the finish line. That will probably take me into early 2022. And once Turtle Party is done, then hopefully, knock on wood, I can start a full-blown Turtle Rescue back where it all began and tell the story with the characters that I want to tell. So now that people have kind of worked backwards in my projects, start with Paint, where you just kind of see the characters, but you really don't know them. And Party, you're a little more interactive with them. Now you go back to Rescue, and that'll be the full-blown, an adventure story with them.
Yeah, I could see working that way. Let me see here. There was a few other things I wanted to ask. Is there anything that you're into currently that's not video games, or it could be video games, I suppose, but anything else that you're into that's, not Turtle Rescue or your games?
You probably can't see them very well on the screen, but I'm a toy collector. At the same time that I was growing up with the NES, I grew up with Transformers and Star Wars. So I have a ton of toys, more than I would like to admit. I have a basement full of toys down there. It's basically the toy warehouse, just brown boxes full of toys that I can't possibly display all of. So I've always had a fondness for the stories of the Transformers, and even toys that don't have stories. Legos. I'm a diehard Lego collector. I still have every single Lego set that I had as a kid, and I still get them to this day. I will still try to come up with outlandish creations with Lego bricks. It just kind of it helps my creativity. It's kind of that starting with something that has structure to it, and what can you build with it? Kind of similar to building a video game. If there's a structure, but it's an art form at the same time. So
yeah.
Legos, I absolutely love any toys. I love.
Yeah, I mean, Legos really lend themselves to creativity, I think. I mean, you can do the sets. Like I just helped somebody put together the Baby Yoda Lego set. And that was kind of fun, but it was interesting to I used to do Legos and be just put together whatever I felt like putting together. And this was much more structured, which is fun in itself too. But
Well, it is. There are definitely, approaches to it. You can follow the instructions and build what they tell you to build, or you can just have a pile of bricks and just. And I know even the people that do their own creations, they have different approaches to it. They'll map it out on paper and graph paper, or even doing digitally build it. It's to see what can I, put it on the computer screen before I start to build it with bricks. But I'm just kind of like old school of just give me a pile of bricks and I'll just slap them together and let's see what happens.
right.
Well, when my wife and I were dating, she loved log cabins, so I thought, well, I'll justify my love of Lego bricks and I'll build a nice, elaborate log cabin to kind of show off, my skills. And I still have that log cabin built today. It's in our dining room. It's
that's
really
awesome.
nice, and there's little Lego figures representing me and now my wife in there. Just kind of like, hey, here's our Lego people living in our Lego log cabin.
Yeah, what a fantastic way to like celebrate the two of you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And plus sometime we'll have to get into the Transformers stuff because I am a huge Transformers fan. So just so you know, some other time.
That's a huge tangent right there.
It is. It's a big tangent. And we're running close to the end of the time here, which so I'll ask my final question. I always ask this to everybody. Is there anything that I should have asked you today, but I did not?
You had some great questions. What would I like to talk about that you didn't ask me? I that's a great question, and you stumped me. So good job.
Oh, okay. I didn't mean to stump you, but
So I'll tell you what. And since I couldn't give you an answer, I will just give you a thank you, very much, because you did the rescue, or you did the turtle rescue review with Frank, and I stumbled upon that. It was Christmas Day that you put that out on YouTube, and I was actually at my wife's grandmother's house. They were doing Christmas Day over there, and I was kind of like, all right, they're doing their thing. I'm just going to get on my phone. Let's see. And I was shocked to see my own game pop up in a recommended video on YouTube. I was like, what? And I watched it and I just laughed. I loved the review, and I never even really I never interacted with you guys before that. You just found the game. You probably wanted to do a Christmas video, and I saw it. I loved it, and I've joined your streams since then, and you've just been very cool about drawing attention to our little community, and I appreciate that, and all of us appreciate that.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. I mean, those guys, the other game beaters help me out and stuff too. But yeah, that's just something in the music community. I do that as well. Just I want to bring attention to good music that people haven't seen, and these are good video games that are worth checking out. So I wanted to, shine a little light on those things. And I always get worried about the Frank reviews because, Frank can be a little abrasive for some people.
He's different, but he's enjoyable. It's that, Family Guy type, humor.
Yeah.
It's not overboard, but, it was subtle enough where you kind of knew what was going on, but it wasn't, it's not crude or anything like that. No.
Yeah. It's definitely a loving thing towards the game. It's not like done with malice or anything.
Absolutely not. And it was never taken that way.
Yeah,
You're
cool.
Fun and you're trying to appeal to all sorts of a whole variety of an audience. You're trying to appeal to a larger range and trying to bring people in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You know the deal. You know what's going on. All right. So before we wrap up, where can people find you on the internet? Is there anything you want to tell them?
Usually the best way to find me is to Google Turtle Rescue NES. You'll find my Twitter hand. That's my Twitter handle. That's my Instagram handle. And everything that I do kind of points to one another. So once you find Turtle Rescue, Turtle Paint, you'll see everything. Okay.
And I'll put all the links. He provided links before the show, and I'll put them all in the podcast stuff below, whether you're listening on Spotify or Apple or whatever, or YouTube. So that's a good way to get a hold of them there. All right, Joe. Well, thank you very much for being on. And, I really appreciate it. Yeah. So, have a good evening.
You too. Thank you. And we'll talk soon.
Yeah, we will. Bye.
Here.